our families here. And I'm really concerned about our economy overall. Our economy is looking more and more to serve the wealthiest or the most educated, and we're not doing enough to figure out how we can create blue-collar jobs and green-collar jobs for the people who aren't doing so well in our education system. That's something that I am committed to do. We have an incredible asset in our port of San Francisco, and we're actually not building our port for maritime uses. We're looking at our port to be used for office buildings and for temporary things at the America's Cup. I think that we can look at how we can use our port assets to create maritime jobs that will be long-lasting, and we can make San Francisco a haven for ships from around the world to be retrofitted for green technology. We'll be able to make use of our port and create thousands of jobs in San Francisco. This is the kind of this is the kind of thinking we need to have, a diverse economy that not just serves the best educated, but all of our people here who live in San Francisco.
And we're now round 4 questions, and this is supporting livable neighborhoods, which is health as well as safety questions. The first question is from Mr. Duffy, the second one from Ms. Baum.
For Supervisor Avalos, what does community policing mean to you?
Great, thank you for that question. Just yesterday, the Ingleside Station had the 40th anniversary of the murder of a police officer, Sergeant John V. Young, at the station. I was there yesterday, and there were a lot of retired police officers that were there. It was an event that showed that we're never going to forget what the sacrifices are of our police officers in San Francisco. To me, community policing is about relationships. It's about relationship building. And we can say that we're going to say that police officers need to walk beats, but if they're walking beats and there's not interaction between merchants and residents and not getting to know people in neighborhoods, we are failing in establishing a real, true community policing program. So as supervisor, what I have done is actually had forums between young people and police officers in ways that young people and police officers can get to know each other and learn each other's perspectives on their jobs. We actually had role plays where young people play police officers and police officers play young people to help get in other people's shoes. I think building relationships and building these opportunities for people to get to know each other are going to help to build trust. That's going to have a great impact on public safety. We've also had vigils where we had homicides in my district, we've had vigils in my district bringing people together. I've gone door knocking with the police captain to make sure that we can talk to victims' families, to show that we have services and care from the city when things happen. And bringing communities together when there have been homicides, when there have been violence, are excellent ways that we can actually show that we have a broad, caring society in the city. And that's something that I want to be able to create across all of our districts in San Francisco as your mayor.
Ms. Baum, followed by Ms. Reese, followed by Mr. Chu.
This is a question for David Chu. You have negotiated an agreement with Larry Ellison for the America's Cup that could allow him to turn a beautiful section of the Embarcadero into a commercial yacht harbor. How can we trust you to believe, what are you going to do so that the billions that are supposedly coming from the America's Cup will end up benefiting those in need in San Francisco rather than those who already have?
I think you're actually somewhat mistaken in what we've agreed to with the America's Cup. I'm very proud to have helped negotiate that agreement here in San Francisco. Initially, Larry Ellison had proposed that we were going to be in the southern piers, in the southern waterfront. And he proposed essentially getting a lot of development rights on very valuable real estate. When it turned out that that deal was going to cost the city a lot, I suggested that we move to the northeast waterfront, where it was going to cost our city much less. We have not turned over any permanent development rights over to Larry Ellison. If he wants to develop in any part in the northeast waterfront or anywhere along the pier, he's going to have to actually work with us to figure out if that's something that the community wants, that neighborhoods want, that the Planning Commission supports, that the Board of Supervisors support, and our next mayor supports. But let me tell you why the America's Cup is such an exciting project. First and foremost, it's going to bring $1.4 billion worth of economic activity to San Francisco. It's going to bring close to 9,000 jobs. It's going to mean we have close to 100% hotel occupancy. It's going to mean that our restaurants and our bars are full. So that is a wonderful thing. Secondly, our waterfront has been crumbling. We literally have piers that are falling into the ocean. And in recent years, we haven't figured out how we're going to find $1 billion that we need to reinvest in our piers. We have an opportunity with the America's Cup to make sure that our waterfront rivals the best waterfronts around the world. That we are creating real beauty and bringing real community onto our waterfront. We're also going to have an opportunity to really invest in transit, to make sure that folks who live along the waterfront have access to public transit as other parts of the city do. Right now, if you've looked at the so-called People's Plan, which is the plan that our city is putting in place to take into account the thousands of folks, actually the hundreds of thousands of folks that will be coming, we're going to use this as an opportunity to build transit not just for 2012 and 2013, but for the future. Now, you can rest assured that any fears or rumors that we have sold away parcels are simply not true. We have a lot of protections in the America's Cup agreements. I spent, along with Gavin Newsom, along with many lawyers in Dennis Herrera's office, countless hours to make sure that that would be the case.
Ms. Reese has the next question. Yes.
I'll ask my question to Terry. Picking up on what John Navalis was talking about related to community policing and building of relationships, my question to you has to do with foot patrols, which are another way to help strengthen the bonds of trust between the community and the residents. If more police are out in the neighborhoods, there's more open communication. So my question to you is, do you support foot patrols? And number two, what other measures are you thinking about to ensure safety in our neighborhoods?
I absolutely support a cop on the beat who's there long enough to get to know the neighborhood and long enough for the neighborhood to get to know the cop. I think that's an essential part of the police and the community working together, and we need to have more of those, and it's a shame that that's one of the first things that gets cut out of the budget. I also believe that neighborhood groups should have a say on the priorities of policing in their neighborhood. Do they want police to focus on people sitting and lying on the sidewalk? Do they want them to focus on trying to solve unsolved murders? We've got to get the neighborhood groups involved in speaking directly with the police about what their priorities are. Another thing I would do would be to replace ROTC with a program in the schools that was equivalent to a very well-developed neighborhood emergency response team, so that children in the schools were getting trained to help in emergencies, and this in turn would lead to them being part of the police and the fire departments, so that we would have a lot of local people in the police and fire departments. And this is another thing we need to have, both for the connection between the police and the neighborhoods, and in case of an emergency, and when the bridges are down, we need to have those people living here already. Thank you.
The next question is from Mr. Chu, followed by Ms. Elliott.
Continuing on this theme around more effective policing, I'm going to ask a question of Dennis Herrera. We know that the Southeast neighborhoods have had far more crime than it ought to. You know that as a former police commissioner. I know that as someone who used to be a criminal prosecutor. I have spent way too many I've spent way too much time here in these neighborhoods speaking to victims of crime who have shared with me their frustrations with not hearing from their police department, not hearing from police officers that are walking the beat who are not fully implementing community policing. We've had now several mayoral administrations that have not fully implemented what we've known for decades is effective about community policing. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in the Bay View at the Opera House, where there were several hundred members of the African American community that were extremely angry and frustrated after a 19-year-old African American was shot. We have to continue to build more trust, and let me raise one other issue that I hope you might be able to touch upon. We now have a lot of criminal justice agencies that are not working together. 11 years ago, there was an immigrant woman named Claire Hondo who was murdered after several criminal justice agencies did not share data about the information they knew about her husband who was slowly beating her to death. We do not have a coordinated database system. It has been 11 years. This system was supposed to take a couple of years and cost a couple $1 million. It is now $23 million in running. And unfortunately, Mayor Ed Lee's administrator does not know when this project is going to be done and how this budget is going to be closed. Dennis, I'd like you to talk about what you would do to move forward a law enforcement agenda if you were mayor.
Thank you, David. First, let me just tell you right off the bat, I think Greg Sir is an excellent choice for police chief. I had the good fortune of working with him when I was on the police commission. I served as president for 3 of the 4 years that I was on there in the late 90s. And if you look back to that, it was when Chief Fred Lau was there. We lived community policing. It was not just a phrase. And what you're talking about is a disconnect and a lack of trust that people have with the police department and with officers on the beat. I'm going to give you some examples. When I was on the police commission, we put in groundbreaking rules with respect to how the department would deal with the issue of racial profiling, how we would handle transgender individuals that came into custody, that we had mandatory roll call trainings of our police officers to make sure that they were staying up on whatever the latest trend or issue was. Those kind of things, working with the community, build trust. And building trust is how you get results in the San Francisco Police Department. We have gotten away from that level of involvement at the police commission level and in terms of what we demand vis-a-vis community involvement. I have every confidence in the world that Chief Greg Sir will do a great job. We do need accountability. I will tell you on the Tampango case, you are correct. We have dealt with that with the lack of coordination between city departments for a decade, and I've had to defend the litigation that has come out of it. It comes up to mayoral leadership in terms of demanding community involvement, working with your police chief to let him do his job or her job as a professional, and making sure city departments are coordinating.
Next question is from Ms. Elliott up here, followed by Mr. Herrera.
Thank you, Tony. My question is for Bevan Dufty. Before I left the Board of Supervisors, I passed legislation that I know you voted for, you may have actually co-sponsored it, but it requires 100% testing of all rape kits in San Francisco. Up until that point, we had not tested all of our rape kits, in most cases because women knew the perpetrator, and so we didn't test it. But what we found in New York City was that when we tested 100% of the rape kits, we had a 70% increase in conviction and ultimate incarceration. What other things will you do to help women who have crimes who are put against them?
Thank you. I think one of the most important things is having a police department that looks like our city, so I certainly want to see women continue to rise to the leadership ranks within the San Francisco Police Department. I also want to speak to the fact that we do need to use best training and best practices, and we have had, under George Gascon for his 1.5 years, he did do a good job of getting the department to do things that hadn't been done before. And I'm a big supporter of Greg Sir's as chief. But I do want to say, we can talk ourselves blue in the face, but until people's promotional opportunities are tied to community policing, we will not see meaningful community policing. The reality is, you get asked a couple of questions when you interview to become a sergeant or become a lieutenant. There is no quantifiable measure that is applied to officers seeking to promote. And I think until that happens, you're not going to see things meaningfully change. And obviously, we need to continue to focus on our crime lab and make sure that it is run efficiently and effectively and respects what we need to be doing. Thank you.
Mr. Herrera, followed by Mr. Alvarez for a question.
My question is to Michaela Alio up here. And I know that, Michaela, you've spent a great deal of time on community involvement when it comes to healthcare with St. Luke's. In this community here in Potrero, we are sandwiched between two hospital development projects, UCSF and San Francisco General. And I'm a big believer in the General, and in terms of its mission, it is a great place. With those two hospitals, how do we guarantee that there will be community involvement in the planning process and in terms of the care that is provided to make sure that it's benefiting the surrounding community?
Thank you, Mr. Herrera.